I'm so glad that we're gonna start this amazing ongoing series. I did a prologue video before the first guest, the first family who is our guest today. So if you guys want to know a little bit more of where did we get this idea, how it started, and how we're going to proceed, please watch that video. I will be uploading it on our website and hopefully soon on IGTV. But today I will let our guest. Hi.
Hello, how are you?
Fine. So everyone meet Trina, and I like the way we're gonna do this because all of our family who are gonna be guests will be answering pretty much the same questions or notions that we're gonna tackle in this series. So I think the best way to do this is like doing it first, and then we will give a little introduction of who we are, what we do, and where are we located in the world. What do you think?
Sounds good.
Awesome. So this is a parenting series, and the way we're gonna try to tackle this series is pretty much going and decentering ourselves. We're gonna enter in the world of our guests, and we will be talking about the notions, the four notions that I think they're very important for every parent to pass to the next generation. And we will be doing this in the format of, like you can say your experience, you can say what you're doing to teach the next generation in your household those notions. So the first notion that we're going to tackle today is the notion of freedom. So so you are a parent, and I love to hear from your perspective. How do you see freedom, and how do you teach freedom to your children?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me on. So my name's Trina. I am raising two Black children in California, and wanted to be explicit that raising Black children, and when thinking about the context of freedom, how freedom has been something we've had to fight for as a people here in the U.S. and also across the globe. And so when I think about what does it mean to raise free children, and what does freedom really mean in terms of parenting Black children, I come to the Audre Lorde quote, which is raising Black children in the mouth of a racist, sexist, suicidal dragon, which I describe that as the United States of America. To raise Black children in that context, in order for them to survive, they must love and resist. And so I think about the power of parenting for freedom, encapsulating both love and resistance simultaneously. And so what freedom looks like is my children being able to love on themselves, to love what it means to be Black, to love their culture, to have cultural pride, to love their community, to love each other, to feel that sense of self-love and love for their people. And then simultaneously, like when that love is not seen, not valued, when they experience violence or hurt or trauma by the world, that they have the ability to resist it, right? So that they don't take no shit from society or cultures that want to put them down or tell them that they're not worthy, right? That doesn't acknowledge that my Black boy has Black joy and that my Black girl has magic, right? So that freedom means that they can actually be fully themselves, that they can move freely in the world, that they can have a sense of deep self-love, just this love of who they are without shame or blame, and feel unapologetic about being Black folks, and take pride in that. And so for me, to be free is to just be able to say, like, I love being Black, I love myself, this is who I am, and to show up in the world. And when the world doesn't accept that, what is their work as young people to resist it? And so that's what being free means, like just freedom to exist.
And I love that you're doing this emphasis in like the freedom of being who you are, because I definitely think like a lot of parents at this moment, like we use that word of freedom, but we are not inherent to that's not inherent with who the child is.
Yeah.
And I love that you are putting that as definitely one of the notions that implicates being who you are. Like, it's not separate. Like, freedom is not separate of what you are and how others perceive you.
Yeah.
So I think like that's so important. So the second notion that I want to tackle in this series is the notion of community, because we hear a lot about all these policies that work for the community and everything. But my question is like, who is your community? So how do you see your community? Who is in your community? And how do you teach your children to work with the community? And what kind of relationship does your family has with that community?
Yeah, that's a really good question, especially right now when folks are being called to be socially isolating or socially distancing from folks. It's I have I have this huge community, right? This huge local community. My family is expansive, right? When I think about African American culture, Black culture, it really kind of harkens back to the African proverb that it takes a village to raise a child, right? There is no this is my child, that's your child, and we're separate. Like, it takes the collective. Like, so this communal kind of living and orientation is our inclination. And so right now, to be like isolated from community and family and be, you have to stay with whatever your nuclear family is, feels very limiting. And also, when we think about family, even this idea of family as like, a two-parent household with two children, a dog, and a picket fence, like that's not our orientation. We were meant to raise our children in villages where there's collective parenting, right, and communal parenting. And so my community is my family, but even as I say family, like that's expansive. We don't only just call blood relatives our family, right? We also call those friends that we grew up with our neighbors, our childhood friends. We have play cousins and play aunties and godmoms and goddads. And, there's just this expansive sense of community and family, right? And so, when we walk around, my son is always asking me, why do I call a lot of other Black people like, what's up, my brother, and hey, my sister? He's like, that's not your sister. And I'm like, yes, it is. That is my brother, and like that's a cultural way of being around expanding this idea of community beyond the biological connections or the blood relations, to be more expansive. And so when we think about who our community is and who my family is, it literally is not the people who live in this house. Like, that is not my family only. It's bigger and larger than that. So it's been really troubling during this time, because community also is the space for healing, right? Our community is where we heal. Our community is where we practice. Our community is where we build skill sets and things like that. And so that's being limited right now, especially for a lot of communities of color. Like, community is the hub of our access to our healing and our connection to joy and our connection to our people. So that's really impacting folks right now during this like shelter in place and isolation. It's really limiting our ability to be connected.
Yeah. So, do you feel in any way, as you're raising your kids, that the society that you are living at is really helping you in this community sense, or on the contrary, is not oriented toward communal?
Oh yeah. It's on the contrary. Our society is very individualistic, right? It's all about the individualism and like just your nuclear family, like this idea that the people who live in your house, this very nuclear family is the focus of American tradition. But that's not the way that, the folks who are native to this land, that's not how they live. That's not their orientation. And then us who have been brought here, who were held captive and brought here, folks of the African diaspora, that's also not our way of orienting. Our way is not to be like, you have a house, you live separate, and you own your property, it's more communal. It's this village kind of setting. And so no, that's not our orientation as a culture, especially as communities of color. But in the United States, there is this emphasis on the individual family unit. And it's just unrealistic. And that's a part of, I was going to mention, this book that's coming out by Parents for Liberation that I'm the author of. There's a whole section in the book called Reconnection to Community. And I've interviewed families who talk about like community and family as the source for our power, our collective power. And so folks are really intentionally like resisting this idea that family is just the people in your house. And even when I think about people in our house, like I grew up in a house that had 20 people all the time. So like when I think about growing up as a child, I always had some cousins or uncles living and aunties. Like there were always it was not just like me and my siblings and my mom and dad. There was like always this expansive, like 20 people in our house. And so even when I think about what does it mean to like have a family in your house, like it's not just one nucleus family. Like that house has like multiple generations in the same household. So we're resisting that idea that it's individualistic.
So I just have to clarify, like we left the introduction and who our guest is to the end, because I want to have parallel, like views when we finish. Hopefully one day we will finish this ongoing series, but the idea is really to compare, contrast, and see the different parallels and the different ways that we are raising children in the year 2020. It happens to be the year of an illness that is worldwide, and all of us are in this together somehow, even if some people don't want to see it, that we are really in it, all of it. That's why it's so important to navigate these questions, because sometimes we just say and repeat and keep saying, but what you're saying is so true. Kids they like to see what you're doing, and it's so fun that like your kids are paying attention. They're asking you and questioning you, like, why do you call them bro? Why why is this like general bond that you're feeling, and you need to explain that. You need to really elaborate it, because sometimes as parents, we assume that kids already know these things. And I think it's so important for us as parents to really nail it and understand that whatever we are internalizing and our experiences, in the communal sense, is what is making us us and what's making our family our family. So the third notion that I wanted to talk, all of these notions are very connected.
Yeah.
So the third notion that I wanted to tackle is what is responsibility?
Mm-hmm.
How do you tackle responsibility? Is this something that has to do with community for you?
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good question. Like, what's our collective responsibility, right? That's the question that comes up
How
for
do
me.
you tackle it? Because I feel at this moment, seriously, we are kind of like seeing two different sections. We're seeing like either the communal responsibility or the personal responsibility, and I wonder if those two are definitely tied to even the other notions that we're talking here. We're talking here about freedom. We're talking here about community and responsibility. And the reason I pick those notions is because I think like we are using it. We're using these words. It's like the word love in English. Like we're always like, oh, I love this and I love that. And there are other languages in the world that have very clear distinctions between the words and what you're first of all what you're meaning, and second of all to whom you're talking to. Mm-hmm. So in English doesn't have that, and I think it tends to be very generalizing. Mm-hmm. So it makes hard sometimes to make assertions about like the entire group of people, and I think it's so important to really understand like, okay, so what's my personal view of that word, And in which way am I really teaching my children? Was that?
Yeah. So the word is responsibility. And so when I immediately go to collective responsibility, and I think about responsibility twofold, right? The like individual or personal responsibility, and I don't think of that as separate from my personal responsibility in relationship to the community, right? And so some personal responsibility right now, right, during COVID is like to make sure I wash my hands and to make sure I wear my mask. Like those are like my individual responsibilities to make sure that I'm not only keeping myself safe, but if I'm engaging with other folks in my community, that I'm keeping them safe, right? By protecting them from my, my breath particles and my hands, right? Like keeping my germs to myself and things of that nature. So that's like my individual contribution or responsibility to our collective wellness. But I don't think about my individual responsibility outside of how am I responsible for how I show up in our community or in our collective. So it is like, for me, it is like, I'm like, they're kind of connected. They're interrelated. And when I think about our collective responsibility in this moment, it's about how are we showing up in community? Like, so for me, I feel like we all play a role in community. So like, what is your gift or contribution to community and how are you responsible? So for me and my family, my community locally, I'm the person who has connections with folks who have like, our plant-based medicines, right? So I get the herbal teas and I get the tinctures and I get the elderberry syrup, right? And I'm like, okay, what are the plant medicines that are going to help folks? Like, is it mullein right now is really important because it helps with respiratory, helps to develop your respiratory needs. And so like, and I'm getting like eucalyptus plants and thinking about things that are going to help folks who might have respiratory needs in this moment of COVID, which is really attacking our lungs. And so I'm like collecting that, and then I'm like messaging my group, right? I'm like, hey y'all, I got some mullein. Who has a cough? Who has a need? Oh, I have some lemon. I have some extra ginger. Does everyone have ginger? Do you need tea? And like I can just get it for myself, right? And be like, my responsibility is to keep me and my children healthy right now. And I could be done. Personal responsibility done. But no, like I need to also make sure that my community has what they need because they might not have access to that or they don't even know about it. And so I'm like, hey, I learned from my friend, right? I learned from my Dominican friend how to make that Dominican tea with the star anise and and all the like the cinnamon stick. So here I got and the allspice, right? Like put this all together, boil it. I learned the instructions and I could have kept that to myself and been like, yes, me and my children are fine. But that's not thinking communal. Right. And so then I go around and I'm like, here, I have the ingredients. Here's the recipe. I have the ingredients. Share that with my community. So I think it's a both and of like the personal responsibility, but also how are your personal responsibilities in service of our collective?
Yes. So this is very interesting because what you said before is what I think is a huge contrast to what is taught as a society, especially here in the United States. Like most of my followers know that I am also in the United States, but I am in a different region in the United States. I'm on the East Coast in Florida, South Florida, and you are on the West Coast in California. So even though we are in different bioregions, I do see some similarities in the way we see our personal responsibility so tied to communal responsibility. But the funny thing is like I don't see that coming from other groups and like when I hear it, and actually I was very surprised to see that like by law in the United States there's seriously it seems to be a preference for personal well-being over communal well-being, even by law.
Yeah.
Even like the Constitution has all these laws and Bill of Rights and everything that has a precedent for the person and not for the commune, like the group well-being. And it makes me think, like maybe I'm so strange because, of course, I wasn't raised in this country. I'm an immigrant. I came here, younger, but I was raised over there and I was raised, by very different set of people. So so I do, like, one more time, I want to make the point that the way you're thinking was passed by somebody for you to have this mentality
Yeah,
and to see it that way, like to see that the gift that you're receiving right now, like the knowledge that you have with the plants and the access that you have for the plants, um, you want to share with your community, and you feel it as a responsibility, and
definitely.
you are teaching that to your children, which, like, it is a huge contrast to what American society upholds, which is, independence and self-reliance without needing anyone else. And one more time, it comes to my mind the words that you said about, how community is healing. And for a lot of us, especially persons of color, um, it is indeed,
Yeah,
because it can get really overwhelming sometimes to feel that you are alone
definitely.
in a system and trying to raise children. So
Yeah.
I'm not crazy here.
No, you're
I
not
just want to
crazy.
highlight that, like, in many ways, of course, my experience is very different to the experience that Trina has. And also, I feel like the fact that we're, in different geographical locations also brings different challenges.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful to hear that perspective. Thank you so much, Trina. The last word that I want to tackle in this series is the word autonomy.
Mm.
And I went over the meanings with the dictionary and everything in the prologue video I created, because I just wanted to, state that, yes, like, there's some public notions, but and their official meaning to a word, but people are the ones that really make the meaning. Like, language cannot be separated from the people that speaks the language.
True.
Bottom line. So for you, and as a parent, and who upholds freedom and liberation in your daily work and what you do as a mother, what is autonomy?
Yeah, and that one's the tricky one, right? Definitely in raising free Black children, them having autonomy, having voice and agency and decision making power over their lives, right? Over getting their needs met. I think about bodily autonomy, spiritual autonomy. I think about the autonomy in terms of like how they how they have some agency over the choices, right? So when I think about what, like, in this moment, right, with COVID, like, our children are home 24/7. And so, like, what is their schedule? Like, what do they do all day? What choices do we make about that? And like, I saw immediately, I saw all these, like, parenting, like, kind of groups or series or school based, like, resources that were like, here's a schedule. And it was like, like, the whole thing was like, do this from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Like, you're working and here your kids are working. It was like these full schedules. And I was like, did the children have any voice in that schedule? Did they have any contribution? Did anybody ever say, hey, child, what do you want to do? How do you want to spend this time? Right. And so when I think about autonomy, it's like, how do you invite your child into some of the choices about their life and how they spend their time? How do we think about the young people as having rights and agency? Like, a lot of people are like, no, I'm the parent, I'm in charge, this is what I want, this is what you're going to do. But when we talk about raising free children, our children who are liberated, in order to be able to experience freedom and liberation, you have to have a sense of dignity. You have to have a sense that your values and that you
Yeah.
matter and your voice matters and what you think matters. And if they can't voice that at home, like, when they get out into the world, like, how are they going to practice that? How are they going to stand up for themselves and have their voice and have agency if they don't have a place to practice that? And so at home, I feel like that is what I'm doing to cultivate there's a strong sense of self, right? Understanding this is what I care about, this is what I want. So and we were doing our schedule, it was like, what is the time that you want to do? Like, what's the activity you want to do? How do you have that choice? And then, like, maybe you want to do it alone. Maybe you want to do it by yourself. Maybe you don't want to be with the family for a few hours a day. Maybe you want to have screen time, right? And so some of those decisions, and like the ability for them to just have basic human rights, right? Rights and dignity, to me is
Well,
how they
it
built their
has a
autonomy.
lot to do with what in general societies do. Like people don't realize that whatever we're doing in our homes, in our in our centers, it's a reflection many times of what's happening outside. And every time you're trying to enforce something, you need to have an enforcer. Like if you're gonna have a schedule, like it happens to me all the time. If I'm gonna say like, okay, so you do this, you do that, like it. I mean, like part of the the idea of autonomy, what you say is like having some self acknowledgement of like this is me who's making these choices, and it's about me trying to figure out how I'm gonna do that, because bottom line, I don't know you, but I don't like being the enforcer all the time, and seriously, it's one of the most debilitating things that happens to me since I'm a mom, because now I'm like supposedly I'm in charge of all these different things that I don't want to, but I have to, because of course they're my responsibility. And but the kids keep growing, and something that has bring to my mind, especially seeing free societies, and I'm gonna say free in many quotation marks,
Yeah.
free societies all the time thinking like they're really free, but their autonomy levels are really, what can I say? They definitely need a nudge all the time, and like doing the right things, and then having an enforcer or somebody controlling their behavior somehow, because otherwise they're not gonna do it because they're rebels. And that's something for me is like what you're saying, like you want to give dignity to the person, to that child,
Yeah.
and a voice to really, for them to understand that the power is in them to do the things that they need to do. They don't need an outside force for them to do what they're supposed to do, which is the basic things. Like if we are encountering ourselves like having constantly saying to like older children, I understand little children are different, like they're learning, and what we need to help is the learning. I don't know what are the ages of both of your children.
My children are 11 and 16. But I feel like children can have autonomy early. Like they have a sense of, they should have like when I think about autonomy for younger children, I think about bodily autonomy, right?
Yeah,
As
yeah,
young as as young as they can start to say like that they don't want something on their body, like babies, right? Like I have, there's little kids who are like toddlers who don't want to wear shoes or don't want to wear socks. It's uncomfortable, or they don't like my son didn't like tags. Like if he had a tag, it would just irritate him. So we started to cut them out. He didn't have words to say at that young age, like take out this tag, but I could tell that it was irritating, right? And so we started to cut them out as early as when he was like in like still wearing onesies, right? So I think like I don't want to say that only older children have autonomy. I feel like we
hmm
should think about their rights, even if they can't verbalize it. Like we can sense and intuit and to be attuned to our children enough to know when something's not right. Like when I think about bodily autonomy for little kids, when we're like, oh, give that person a hug or give that person a kiss, or like we force them or tell them like, oh, go give your grandma a hug. Like it's rude if you don't. And if they don't want to, like, do they have the autonomy to say like, I don't actually feel comfortable
Yeah, and
doing
nobody
that?
pushing them to do it. Well, that was kind of like what I wanted to mention is that my friend from consent parenting, we had a conversation about it, and she was telling me that how important it is to teach children, especially in a really young age, that their bodies were theirs.
Right.
And they're the ones that will make their own decisions. And in which ways doing that really protect them from predator behavior
Yep.
of on other of other children or people in the community. And really that was such a striking point for me, at least because I remember growing up in a society that the levels of autonomy were really non-existent.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to do everything that I was told. And I think trying to really understand why, uh, especially growing up in South America and in a country that was colonized and like pretty much uh, in many ways our culture is very based into like colonization mindset, which like we are supposed to be police all the time, we are supposed to like do everything that they told us, because somehow they are always telling us that we don't know enough, like somebody else knows more, and we are like a third world country and we don't know anything, and that affects like our own perception of our ourselves in
Yeah.
general. And
Yeah.
so it's so important to bring that to the parenting that we're doing at this moment, especially in the year 2020, because I do believe that you can see it in the air. Societies are changing,
Thank goodness.
and even if people don't want to face it, societies are indeed changing. And if we are not preparing our children to live in a different environment and empower themselves, I feel like we will be failing them. So part of the whole thing is really realizing that a sense of autonomy in their lives really pays off. Not only because, it's better for us as parents, we don't have to kind of, be all the time on top of the children, but also is because it's really talking about the inner power that children can have.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, and
Thank
I think
you.
at this moment we are ready to know who you are, your commitment, your mission, your website, all your projects.
Yeah.
So please feel free to share it all of us.
Thank you for this very dynamic and rich conversation. It feels really good to just have a conversation about these like key notions that are needed for us to raise liberated children. So my name's Trina. I'm the founder of Parenting for Liberation. We are a nonprofit who really works to support Black families in raising liberated children. Website is parentingforliberation.org. Our Instagram, you have it. Instagram is and social media. We also have a podcast, so we have some of these conversations in an auditory format. So you can check us out on Anchor, iTunes, or Spotify. And also, I just wanted to share this book that's coming out. I have it on my bookshelf already, which is Parenting for Liberation, a
Wow,
guide for raising Black
beautiful.
children.
I
Um,
love the cover.
Thank you. Shout out to Amir Kadar, who's the artist who created the graphics in the book. So there's beautiful graphics throughout the book. It's a guidebook, and so it utilizes parent stories. So similar to how you're interviewing parents, I interviewed parents for this book, and I took each story that the parents shared, and I coupled it with a liberated parenting strategy. So you actually can go through this and like with every story, there's a strategy. So how can you try what the parents shared in their story? There's 20 stories, 20 strategies, and it will be available Juneteenth, which is June 19th, but you can pre-order them now on at Feminist Press is my publisher. You can order it there, and if you use the code Trina20, you can get 20% off right now. So
Oh, wonderful. So everybody, please be on the lookout for this amazing book, which I think it should be in all of our libraries at this moment.
Maybe it'll come soon.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued. All these stories are from people that you collaborate in daily basis in the Bay Area, or where are you
No,
located?
I'm in Southern California, but all the stories are folks from the U.S., across the U.S., and they identify as Black parents or caregivers. And some of them I have deep relationship with, and some I've met through the podcast. Like someone will say, "Oh, you should talk to this parent," and I'm like, "Okay, connect me." And so I really feel like it is a collective thing. Like folks will refer me to other people, and then I get on a call, and they drop their wisdom, they drop their liberated parenting strategies, and that's the magic of like making connections beyond just who you know, and like expanding your horizon. So yeah, I've met some incredible folks as I've been doing the podcast. And so if folks are interested in being on the podcast and identify as a Black parent and want to share their stories about how they're raising their children, not only in the United States, if folks want to share the stories about how they're raising Black children in other countries, like please feel free to reach out. Can shoot us an email, info@parentingforliberation.org, or find us on social media and message us, just like you did, right? Like,
Yes. That's actually how we met. I've been following Parenting for Liberation for a while, and then realizing that, like, in order for me to start this series, I wanted like a representation of liberation indeed for parents.
yeah,
Because you hear a lot from like a lot of PhDs and like very psychologists, but I'm like, who's better than a person who's really actually raising a child at this moment in this world? Parents.
yeah,
Parents. So I think we have a lot to bring to the table, and we are the ones that are running a lot of the fronts at this moment. So I'm very thankful for you for what you're doing, especially for your mission, and I hope you can follow the whole series. I don't know. I mean, it really started because I wanted to bring some perspective. I feel sick and tired of, people that just consider their own perspective all the time. And I feel like a lot of us are kind of in the same thing, but perhaps a lot of us are not even aware that these things are going on for other families.
yeah,
So my idea is that, like all of us are indeed raising children, and all of us want to bring children that are free in this world.
yeah,
But let us really analyze what we are thinking and what we're doing.
yeah.
So thank you so much for everybody who joined in, and this will be recorded. I will be uploading this, and we'll be uploading this on YouTube as well. It's better with the subtitles for the persons that do need it. I want to apologize one more time. I don't have an iPhone, and there's not an app that I can access at this moment. I would love to do subtitles if I have the time, but times is kind of short, especially for parents that are doing all these things online as well. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Trina, and I hope you are having a great time. And let us know here in Mama Tortuga if in any way we can support what you're doing, and also your new book.
Thank you. Well, keep up the great work, and I look forward to the rest of the series and learning from parents, not only the United States, but across the globe, about how they're raising free children in this moment. So I'm looking forward to this series and learning more from other parents. Thank you for giving me the time. All right. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you.